universities are aspiring for more of a destination, and you need food and beverage, you need entertainment, you need all those things to go along with it. So we're now seeing much broader, more ambitious procurements that may have healthcare, it may have research, it may have office, it may have retail.
If you've ever developed or renovated student housing, you know the pressure that comes with designing mechanical systems that simply cannot fail. Hot water, heating, and cooling outages aren't just an inconvenience. They're a resident satisfaction nightmare. That's where Teal Systems comes in. Teal provides managed central plant systems that deliver domestic hot water, heating, and chilled water for multifamily and student housing developments. Their systems are designed with built-in redundancy and are monitored 24/7 through Teal's proprietary beacon technology, allowing their team to detect and correct issues before they ever impact residents. Instead of the traditional break and repair cycle, Teal offers a central plant-as-a-service model, handling design support, installation coordination, monitoring, and ongoing maintenance, so your operations team doesn't have to manage complex mechanical infrastructure, and lowering operating expenses. Their systems are already operating in student housing developments across the country, delivering unlimited, on-demand hot water for thousands of bedrooms in projects near campuses like Texas A&M, UT Austin, and Georgia Tech. If you're planning a new development or upgrading aging infrastructure in an existing community, Teal Systems is worth a look. Learn more at tealsystems.com, because when it comes to student housing, your residents should never run out of hot water.
Well, what's up, everyone, and welcome to the Student Housing Insight Podcast, where we are putting you in touch with the people who bring student housing to life. I'm your host, Wesley Deese. I'm also the CEO of Student Housing Insight. If this is your first time catching any of our content, just so you know, we are a platform for off-campus student housing professionals to network, share ideas, as well as data. And you can find out more about our platform by visiting studenthousinginsight.com. Again, that's studenthousinginsight.com. In addition to the podcast, we also host the industry's monthly webinar for the U.S. called Shop Talk. Each month, we provide legislative and policy updates that are impacting our industry. Shop Talk also provides a monthly overview of pre-leasing data on a national or regional basis, along with a panel of operators who provide their on-the-ground observations. And we typically provide a topic of the month as well. So a lot of great information. And if you are involved with the operations of student housing in the U.S., you should be registered to receive our monthly invites. You can register to receive those, as well as review prior Shop Talk episodes by going to shoptalk.info, and we'll provide that link in the notes as well. Well, folks, I have now been in this industry going on 28 years, and a lot has changed over that amount of time. Many of the companies have become larger than I ever imagined. We've certainly talked about how on this podcast, how institutionalized the industry has become. A lot of companies that were, highly active even a decade ago are no longer around. But the assets, the properties, those have really changed. And the way these projects are designed, developed, and financed, that's really changed quite significantly as well. And another element that has changed significantly over my career is the relationship with the institutions that we serve. What started out as private developers, providing purpose-built housing for students who could no longer be housed on campus, and surrounding neighbors that didn't want students devaluing their values, home values. Universities then began looking, to these same developers to provide on-campus housing that met the living standards for modern students. I guess that's the best way to explain it. But for today's students, and to utilize financing methods that would keep housing off of their balance sheets, so they could then focus on building classrooms and research facilities, which is obviously what we want our universities focused on. And now I'm starting to see that relationship between public institutions and these private developers evolve beyond housing. And I'm not just talking about, a new dining center or a bookstore. I'm talking about athletic arenas and infrastructure, healthcare facilities, parking decks, you name it. Institutions are considering if they should partner with a private firm to deliver whatever it is to their campus. And now, please, I want you to understand this. I'm not talking about just developing and constructing these facilities. Partner in the truest form of or truest definition of the word. They're involved with the financing. They may even raise private equity for the project. And there's revenue share, or there's ongoing fee income for the private partner as well. So that's what I mean by partnership. There's some great housing companies that participate in these public-private partnerships, or as we commonly refer to them as P3s. They've created phenomenal relationships with the institutions they serve. And when I talk to university administration on the public side of the relationship, they've expressed a lot of appreciation for those companies because they've delivered the projects quicker and typically more cost effective than they ever could. So it makes perfect sense why many of these universities are now looking for these private companies, or to these private companies, and asking if they can partner on other types of facilities. And many of these on-campus developers are doing some self-reflection and saying, we've built an indoor basketball court, but we've never built an arena. Or we've built thousands of kitchens, but we've never built a cafeteria to serve thousands of people multiple times a day. So last fall, when Capstone Development Partners announced that they were purchased by Lincoln Property Company, the same company that built the Star, which is the headquarters and entertainment district for the Dallas Cowboys, it started to become really clear to me what the strategy in this acquisition was about. Yes, it was about a succession plan for their principals, Jeff Jones and Bruce McKee. But it was also about offering universities a development partner that could really check all of the boxes, no matter what the scope of their next RFP was. And, additionally, if you look at how NIL is impacting college athletics right now, Lincoln now has an in-house team that understands student needs really better than anyone. I can't think of anybody else better than Capstone that understands students. So I wanted to sit down with Capstone's chief development officer and new managing principal, William Davis, to talk about this recent transaction. I did not want to do this interview over the internet, so we made arrangements to record in a studio in Atlanta, which was great because not only did I get to sit down with William face to face, but Lincoln's senior EVP, Johno Harris, was able to join the conversation as well. Hey, this was a huge thrill for me. Let me explain why. So I grew up in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, and that was when Johno's father, Johnny Harris, was a major influence in shaping the city skyline and really, I guess, the suburban landscape around Charlotte. And so that's why it's even more amazing for me to see these two companies come together. And, with that being said, here's my conversation with William Davis and Johno Harris with Capstone Development Partners, powered by Lincoln. Well, gentlemen, welcome to the podcast. William, it's great to see you. We've, and Johno, you as well, but William and I have gone around in the same circles for probably our entire careers. I don't know that we've ever actually had a chance to sit down and chat, so excited about that. And Johno, we both traveled from Charlotte to be here today in Atlanta. Big thanks to the guys at Multifamily X Podcast for allowing us to use their studio today. And if you're in the audience and you don't know about Multifamily X Podcast, make sure you go check them out on YouTube. But what has brought us here today, you guys made a pretty significant announcement back in the fall. Capstone Development Partners and Capstone Management Partners, who were part of a bigger Capstone group, and we could talk about that a little bit, William, but Capstone Development Partners primarily being focused on on-campus public-private partnerships, ended up being acquired by a Lincoln company, and or Lincoln Property Company. I'm still used to it being called Lincoln Harris, so it's taken a little bit of getting used to. But just really quick, let's start with Capstone Development Partners and talk a little bit about just leading up to this acquisition, kind of what the history was there for our audience that may not know the Capstone story.
First of all, thanks for having me, Wes. It's great to be here and to tell the Capstone story and now the Capstone Powered by Lincoln story. But I'll try not to put you all to sleep with the entire history lesson on Capstone. But Capstone really was founded by Mike Moran in the late 80s, early 90s. And Mike had a vision to see the student housing industry really prosper and seeing a lot of opportunity. So it really started as more of an off-campus developer, garden-style walk-up. A lot of those communities are still around today. And universities started to take note and said, can you replicate that model on campus? And Mike, being a CPA, very creative, very entrepreneurial, expanded the business into both off-campus development, on-campus development. That eventually spawned management companies, construction companies, ultimately migrated to acquisition rehab. And before you knew it, we were a full-scale company focused on P3s, off-campus, cottage-style, acquisition rehab, and then I'll call that kind of chapter 1 Capstone.
Yeah.
And then in 2012, Mike, who was 100% owner of Capstone, was looking to effectuate his business continuity plan, and he ultimately decided to separate the company into 4 successor companies, Capstone Development Partners being one of those, and we were initially led by Bruce McKee and Jeff Jones. Mm-hmm. We were focused on campus and campus edge P3s, Capstone Collegiate Communities, which was more of an off-campus developer, contractor, and manager. They also expanded to build to rent, senior housing, also still do student as well. And then Mike's 3 sons took on Capstone Real Estate Investments. They were focused more on acquisition rehab, repositioning of assets. And then the 4th company was Capstone Campus Management, COCM, which was the on-campus property manager. So all 4 of those companies kind of charted their path in 2012. We all relatively stayed in our lanes in terms of our business line scopes. But since then, we've all grown, we've all evolved, but still have very close relationships with each of those companies, and all are very successful in their own right. So that was kind of the chapter 2, and now CDP, Capstone Development Partners, and Capstone Management Partners are in chapter 3. So similar to Mike's business continuity plan, Jeff and Bruce, who are our 2 principals, were looking to kind of get off the merry-go-round themselves. So they were very thoughtful and intentional about structuring a business continuity plan, not only to allow them to get off the merry-go-round, but to ensure that Capstone is a long-standing company. Their legacy wanted to be just like Mike's, that those who helped him build and them build the company to what it was, to allow them to continue to be successful moving forward. So I'm eternally indebted to all 3 of them for positioning us and positioning me for where we are. So as of October, we effectuated our transaction with Lincoln. We'll talk more about how that kind of evolved. But honestly, it allowed us to check lots of boxes, Wes. I mean, I think it allowed us to effectuate our business continuity plan and restructuring and leadership change. It also really responded to where the market was. And we were competing against the Gray Stars, the ACC Blackstones of the world, with really 2 individual balance sheets. And so we had always known that wasn't going to be sustainable for us, particularly as the market continued to evolve and opportunities grew. So we were really kind of looking for a twofer in terms of allowing a next generation continuity change, but also arming us with the capital resources to continue to be successful in this industry. So we'll look forward to sharing more, but we couldn't be more pleased with where it ended up.
Yeah. And I know Mike was the author in some ways of the public-private partnership with universities. And I know he wishes he could have patented that, but it's amazing to see how that has evolved since that happened. And John, I got to imagine most of our audience is probably not familiar with Lincoln and previously Lincoln Harris, because they're all in the student housing world. But you guys are all over the place, and even to a very strong point, we talked earlier about some things you guys are looking at doing from a sports
standpoint on campus, and I'm excited to talk about that. But yeah, give the audience a little bit of background about what Lincoln has evolved into.
Lincoln Property Company is a 60-year-old company founded by a wonderful man named Mac Pogue out of Dallas, Texas, and Trammell Crow. 60 years ago, shook hands and started Lincoln Property Company, and there's all great stories, right?
Yeah.
And about the company and why it's named Lincoln. And honestly, it's named Lincoln because Trammell said to Mac Pogue, "Don't name it after yourself." Interestingly enough. And so, it's a 60-year-old company, and it's founded on partnerships, and it's founded on culture, and it's founded on people. Today, we have 4,000 employees or more across the country and into Europe. We're a full-service real estate company built on partnerships and service. At the end of the day, we went through a little bit like what Capstone and William talked about, is we went through our own sort of succession planning. We're certainly, about 3 years ago, we recapped the company with a group called Stone Point Capital, based out of Connecticut, and Chuck Davis and Jim Carey and the group. And, we ran a bespoke process in doing it. And because what really matters to us is partnership. And you can see that while William's sitting here beside us. I mean, truly, I think culture, when we go through what we do, it's all about who we can partner with and what can we accomplish together. So we did that 3 years ago, and when we did that, it allowed us to do a couple things. One being, we were set up as the old Trammell Crow model with 35, offices across the country and into Europe, and they were sort of siloed owned businesses. You talk about Lincoln Harris.
Yeah.
Lincoln Harris was one of those. And so one of the theses that we had was those walls are going to come down, and we're all going to come together and be aligned as we go forward. And then also it allowed us to put the best players on the field as it results to what the right product is. Mm-hmm. We do everything. We do everything from data centers to multifamily to office to retail. The only one that we really don't do is hotels. We don't operate hotels. Mm-hmm. We'll certainly build them, and we have capabilities of doing it, but we don't operate hotels. And I think as you think about where we are today and having Stone Point as a partner, we were able to do some M&A transactions. And, we've done 10 over the last 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And each of them were strategic in nature, but it started with culture. Mm-hmm. It started with, who do you want to have a beer with? Who do you want to be in the foxhole with? Yeah. Who do you want to partner with? And so, but they were strategic in nature. So when you take a group like, Capstone, it puts a feather in a cap to what we have in our abilities. We had done work for universities, as an example, in the past, but we really didn't have the expertise as it resulted to student housing. And that's a dynamic platform. Yeah. It's a dynamic market, and you really got to understand it. And I think at the end of the day, like every one of our M&A transactions, there was a thesis that we had about it, but we learned that it actually reversed, and it was better for Lincoln than almost better for Capstone. And the example I would give you in the Capstone example is we've worked together and we've chased some deals together, but now we're able to really have some deeper conversations about, what is a P3 and how do we come together? Because in any of these P3s, I don't care if it's a major league sports franchise, a university, it all comes down to sources and uses, mm-hmm. right? And where are the sources and where are you going to use them, right? And so to have the creative minds that these guys have relative to how to bridge the gap on some of these sources and uses, and our national team being able to do that as well and get creative, I think solve some issues as we look out in the future where this market's going relative to student housing and also development as a whole.
You guys actually came together on a deal in Alabama, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So interesting story, Wes. I want to come back to what Johno said too, because about the people, the culture, the partnership, and I think that's really what was ingrained with us. That's how we kind of grew up in the business. I think that's been consistent. That's really kind of the story of how Capstone and Lincoln came together. So we had developed a Campus Edge asset in Huntsville, got to know the University of Alabama Huntsville administration.
Now, when you say Campus Edge, because I've had several properties named Campus Edge. Are you talking about an actual property, or are you talking about something on the edge of campus?
I would say slightly off campus, not
Gotcha.
on the campus proper, but we're pretty dang close to it.
Gotcha. Now, was it a privatized off-campus deal?
It was actually privatized. We have an affiliation with the university through some parking ground lease, and I won't get too into details of all the particulars, but so it was more of a Campus Edge privatized student housing facility. So we got to know, we had a really good relationship with the university. They had some property they had acquired many, many years ago that they have had their eye on for some time to do more of a mixed use development.
Mm-hmm.
So we, Capstone, put our hat in the ring, and we were shortlisted. And while Capstone, our bread and butter has really been student housing, we've done office, we've done academic, we've done dining, we've done athletics, we've done parking, but that really wasn't our core expertise. I think we were kind of nibbling around the edges, and we made the decision to really put our best foot forward. We needed to kind of arm ourselves with a partner that brings that expertise. So we were fortuitously connected with Lincoln on that, and we ended up pursuing that together. We're ultimately selected. And I think just kind of back to what Johno was saying about the people, the culture, the partnership, it was like we'd been working together for a really long time.
Yeah.
I mean, we just automatically clicked.
Yeah.
The way we approach business, the way we approach our team, the way we approach people, the way we approach partnership, and we're like, all right, this works. Like, I think we have something here. And so, candidly, we were in the midst of some continuity planning, and we had looked at private equity, looked at M&A, we looked at kind of maintaining our current course, and we effectively shot our shot and said, hey, Lincoln, we're in the midst of this, but if you all would entertain a broader discussion, we'd be happy to kind of engage in that. And the resounding answer was yes. And so it honestly kind of took off from there. I think really from top down, everybody across Lincoln, I think it's been very collaborative, very synergistic. And I think we've kind of been both playing in similar spaces, but doing different things. And I think the fit has been very natural. And again, so we had a bit of a trial run in terms of working on opportunity together. And I think everything since then has really proven out, and we're really pleased with it.
Those organic partnerships.
William's biggest problem is we got, as I said, 35 offices, 35 market leaders, and they're all calling them saying, I got a deal, I got a deal.
So we've been trying to do us learning Lincoln learning Capstone, and kind of what are the ingredients to a key successful deal, because everybody knows somebody, everybody knows a landowner, and so, but I think it's been honestly a good problem to have. And so we're making sure we've got the development resources, the expertise alongside us to execute, but we also, I think the partnership with Lincoln and Stone Point has opened some other doors as well, which will hopefully lead to bright things in the future.
So number one, I mean, organic partnerships like that are so key, and some of the greatest companies, especially in the real estate business, have come out of that, and so that's a great story. I wanted to ask, why this deal, why now? Because there's a lot of things going on in higher ed that's changing. Yeah. And I see some things coming together here that I think we'll probably get into, but just going back to that question, why this, why now? Yeah, and I would say, Wes, we were in the business continuity mode for a while now, and I think that probably was out there in the market too, like what happens to Capstone? We saw the kind of transition from Mike to Bruce and Jeff and other successor companies. As Bruce and Jeff look to wind down, where does Capstone head? And so we had been down a number of different roads, but to Bruce and Jeff's credit, they were very intentional in terms of the objectives for continuity. It wasn't just, hey, let's maximize value, right off in the sunset. That was never them. And so I'm, again, eternally grateful for how they handled it. I think it was as much about them, the Capstone name. We built a reputation, we built a brand. How can we carry that forward? How can we enhance that? So as I said earlier, I think allowing them to exit the company was certainly an objective. I think arming ourselves with a strategic partner and a growth partner, but also a capital partner. And really we feel like, again, we've checked all those boxes with Lincoln and Stone Point, because we've kind of stayed within our zone. Part of that was capital. I think part of that was just where we've been, but we also see a lot of opportunity out there. And I think
to use an old Mike Moranism, we want to grow like the skin of the onion. And I think that's always kind of been our culture and our philosophy, that we know our core. It's on-campus development, campus edge development, and management. And so we'll stay true to that. I think it's a very high barrier entry market. There's lots of very successful competitors and friendly competitors in that space. So we will never turn our back on that market. And we know that's where our expertise is. But how do we grow organically from that? Take that in terms of workforce housing, campus edge, off-campus, acquisitions, mixed use. There's a lot of things that we can kind of continue to evolve and grow, and I think Lincoln Stone Point positions us very well for that.
Yeah, look, I think from the Lincoln standpoint, when you look at student housing and you look at what's being developed today, it's 1 + 1 = 3 in the aspect of it's not just student housing anymore. It's a mixed-use nature. It's retail. It's the activation. It's placemaking. It's infrastructure. There's a lot of elements that are coming into play when you're going to do these things. And I think for both of us, having the ability to put all those pieces of the puzzle together is really, really important. I mean, as an example, another one of our M&A transaction was Centennial. You know, Centennial is a retailer for all intents and purposes in the aspect of they used to buy or still buy busted malls, you know, and 1 million square foot malls, take them down to 400,000 square feet, and they used to sell off the property to other developers. And we were like, whoa, you're slicing up the fillet, you know. And so we ended up, you know, making that acquisition. But what's happening there is, just like Capstone, the reverse effect is happening, meaning they're sitting with us when we're talking about placemaking these mixed-use opportunities. They know all the retailers. More importantly, they know the retailers and the operators of those retailers that are coming out with new concepts. So you're able to get that cutting edge when you're looking at the mixed use. And so all those elements coming together for doing a student housing, because that's what the students want, right? Yeah. That's what the universities want.
Well, that was something I was kind of curious about, as to who may be leading kind of the process, you know, between you guys and the universities on filling that retail, because I know a lot of that has been tied up with other contracts with you know, food providers and that type of thing. So are universities looking more towards private development and real estate guys to do that?
I think it's a good question, Wes, and just to kind of piggyback on what Johno said. Like, it used to be you'd see a 400-bed student housing development, that was it. And now, like, that's more of the exception than the norm now. So when you see these big mixed-use developments coming, and I think they're going to continue to come. Like, we just met with the university this morning. When we were listening to kind of their needs, objectives, we're like, we got something for that, we have something for that. And it's like, now we have all these in-house. So as opposed to cobbling together experts across the country, like, we've already been through the trials and tribulations of like forming this partnership and where our strengths are and how we're aligned. But I do think on the retail side specifically, I think a lot of this, we view ourselves as really an extension of the university. Like, we're not one just to come out and say, hey, we're going to build this commercial retail development and build it and they'll come. Like, where our real strong suit is partnerships with universities. So we want it to be seen as that university front and center. We don't want them to see Capstone Lincoln. So there's infusion of public dollars, private dollars, commercial. I mean, there's an interesting amalgamation of all these things that I think really what gets us excited. I think that's what really attracts us to Lincoln, is like, we've always said we're kind of deal junkies, and I was like, I went to meet with the Lincoln Market Partners, like, good grief, they're all deal junkies. They all have the same kind of DNA and same fabric, but I think it's been exhilarating for our team, and really, I think a lot of excitement and opportunity around that as well.
Well, and we went to lunch before this and talked a little bit about, you know, just how much broader these RFPs are getting from the universities, and sometimes there's a municipal component to it as well, where the university is trying to take on more of a community, serve the community from a broader spectrum, I guess is what I'm trying to say. How much of that, you know, over your career, how much of an evolution of that have you seen?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely evolved, Wes. I'm in now my 20th year with Capstone, and again, one of the first deals I worked on had a dining component, had a little bit of retail component, large project, and like, we thought that was complex and crazy. And if we went back and looked at those dollars versus today's dollars and today's market, I think we'd be astounded. But I do think, and Johno can talk about this too, particularly where sports and entertainment's headed, I think given where universities have come out, I think you're kind of getting the rich are getting richer. And I think we're having to get creative, more nimble. I think you've certainly seen a turn in the market the past couple of years where it used to be everyone equated P3s to private financing. Well, now that's not necessarily the case. I mean, we're working right now at the University of Virginia. First meeting we had, hey, we UVA can borrow less expensively than you all can. We're going to provide the financing. We're looking for you all to provide the execution risk, the speed to market. So I think the goals and objectives are evolving a bit. And I also think people have always equated P3s with student housing. Obviously, there's a revenue stream that comes with the student housing, certainly dining and other things, but I think it kind of comes back to what Johno was saying too. Universities are aspiring for more of a destination, and you need food and beverage, you need entertainment, you need all those things to go along with it. So we're now seeing much broader, more ambitious procurements that may have healthcare, it may have research, it may have office, it may have retail, have student housing. So we're working, and I think part of this is exciting, the challenge of that, when you're combining revenue streams with non-revenue streams, different financing sources, and you're really getting to a public-private partnership because you're getting the private party, you're getting the university, but you're really needing cities and municipalities right there alongside with you too, particularly on infrastructure components. So I definitely think the market has seen a shift in the last 2 or 3 years. I think it will continue to shift.
We talked a little bit about sports entertainment, and it's amazing. I remember went to the first game at the new arena in Louisville when it opened, and then, I mean, gosh, that's probably been 9 years ago now, 10 years ago. It was, Rick Pitino was there at the time.
Yeah.
And so it was, everybody was excited about the basketball program. Still are, but, Coach Pitino being there was a big deal. In fact, the property I was working on, we actually did a deal with him. This is way before NIL. But we did a deal with him where, he was answering the message on the phone or whatever to, if someone had to be put on hold. But that's when it kind of really clicked with me of sports is going a whole different area when it comes, because they had the bars on either side that were underneath the lower or the upper deck. And it was really, you and I both come from Charlotte, and I'm sure you've been to a few Hornets games. And, we had the old Coliseum out on Tavola, and I walked into that in Louisville, and I was like, wait a minute, I've just completely missed where college sports was going to. And now we're seeing more and more of that. So I'm really interested. I mean, you guys have a very impressive resume when it comes to professional sports arenas and entertainment complexes. Obviously, bringing that to universities is going to be a big deal when they're talking to Capstone Development, partnered by Lincoln. For our audience, can you give a little bit of background on what that resume includes?
As we talk about Lincoln, it's a service company, right, and built on a partnership. We're known for our development, and a lot of that development has been mixed use in nature. And while it started, that mixed use was typically a build a suit for, a institution or a company that, we were doing business for, and then we would basically control, and it's the age-old adage about real estate, control the land around, an important piece of property. Well, you control that land and you build it out, right? And you bring mixed uses to it. And that's how we really started. However, that building is now turned into an arena, a practice facility, and ultimately a team or a university. And so we really started with that at the Star in Frisco with the Cowboys, and was a great partnership and is a great partnership with the Cowboys and the Jones family, and it's been a great success. Certainly, you take a mixed use complex like that, and we did some really good things, and we probably did some things that we learned from and we would do differently. But I mean, ultimately, you look today, I don't think anybody would imagine when it started that we would have much office as we do out there, right?
Yeah.
I don't know that we would imagine as successful as it's been. Now, having said that, the Jones family, Mr. Jones, the Cowboy brand, the Star, it is what it is, So we really started there, And then that's culminated into the Spurs. You know, we did the practice facility for the Spurs. We're doing the practice facility today for the Charlotte Hornets.
Okay.
We're doing the Cleveland Browns. We're helping the Haslam family with the new stadium and the mixed use around it. And we're having a lot of other conversations out there. I'm probably missing a couple that we've done. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it drives back to the partnership and building that partnership. And I will say this, is it results to that sort of major league sports and where we're seeing this in the collegiate or university world, it's coming. I mean, the comparison of the two is pretty dynamic in the aspect that, you know, if you look at what these major league teams are trading for today in billions of dollars, they have to create other revenue, right? And that other revenue, while yes, you're selling seats and suites, but it's also about sponsorship. It's also about the mixed use nature. It's also about building the brand in the market and outside of the market. I mean, we're sitting here in Atlanta, and arguably maybe the best mixed use, you know, sports entertainment, you know, place in the country is the Battery. And certainly what Terry McGirt and the whole team at the Braves did is dynamic. And if you drive that to the collegiate level today with NIL, and I think NIL, and I'm not getting in the political world and not saying good, bad, or indifferent, because it's here, right? And, you know, the rules of the engagement are what they are. But, you know, look, at the end of the day, NIL is in play. And, you know, it's really hard to go to a donor and say, help pay for a point guard or a quarterback, and also we need, you know, the new mechanical system in the practice facility, or we need a new practice facility. So you've got to create that other income, and it's really interesting too. I think there is a dynamic relative to the student base. What do the students want? They want the activation too, right? Yeah. They want to be able to go to an event, you know, a basketball game, a football game, come early, stay late, just like they were going to, you know, they grew up going to major league sports. Today, when you're having conversations with a university and they start talking about student housing and they say, hey, look, we've been to one of your projects and we want you to build us the apartment building that you built here for our NIL students, because that's a way that we can help pay for having students here. That's a dynamic change than your typical student housing project. And so I think that is one of those elements, right, as specific as it is, that is really beneficial with Capstone and Lincoln coming together, because, you know, you take Six and go out of what we did in Austin and you start mirroring up what Capstone does, all of a sudden it comes together. I think all those elements are getting into the mix and, you know, creating that soup. And I think, you know, we bring a little bit of a different package to those universities.
Well, and going back to the Louisville and Rick Pitino story, I mean, that was one of the things he mentioned to the developer of that project of, hey, I want to be able to bring recruits and folks here to see this, because this isn't like anything we've got on campus, at least that was back then. And so, and I, you know, I've spoke with other college athletes, you know, one in particular that you and I know together, that their housing situation was not great. Even though they were full scholarship players, their housing situation was not that great. They may have aged out of being able to be on campus. And, you know, one story in particular of an athlete that I know that was in subsidized housing, that it caused a lot of issues for him as a student athlete, and a lot of things that he wasn't expecting he was going to have to deal with, but it was what he could afford. I'm just kind of curious, is a lot of this, what some of the things that you're seeing from a sports entertainment complex, is that going to include some type of residential component?
So it has to. There's no question it has to. I mean, look, at the end of the day, when you talk about it on a university or collegiate level, there's a number out there, and I can't remember what the percentage is, but it's almost, I think I got told 70%. So you may have to verify this, but 70% of the students from outside of the country going to the University of North Carolina come because of Michael Jordan. And you think about that, right? And the experience of going to a basketball game or a football game at the University of Texas that is part of the experience that these students want to have.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you look at, just think about it this way: you look at the SEC schools and the enrollment for SEC schools over the past 5 years is because of the experience they want to have in that SEC school because of football, and so that's driving the demand, which in turn there needs to be the supply of student housing, right, and that experience.
Well, and not just going to the University of North Carolina because Michael Jordan went there, but even wanting to live at Granville Towers, that is a building he lived in, and it's, you know, that's one of the reasons a lot of folks want to go see Granville Towers.
Well, and for these sports entertainment mixed-use districts to thrive, they need that vibrancy, the vitality. What better way than getting 24/7 students living right there within it? And I think it all comes back, Wes, to student experience. I mean, I think that's really, we talk a lot about partnerships, and I think it's creating and managing relationships, but it's also really informing the student experience and helping provide and foster that. I mean, I think those are the most formidable years. I think student experience look different across different students, different demographics, different campuses, but I think, particularly in the NIL world, I mean, if you're on an NIL contract, and where are you spending your time? You're spending it at the gym, the classroom, your student housing. So all of those have to be, the competition is just rising. So I think it's important that we hold up our end of the bargain to make sure that we're providing that exceptional experience.
Yeah. I've even been a part of conversations with companies like Under Armour and Nike who have these athletic villages, you know, in their headquarters, and they've got athletes that are living there just to wear out their shoes and you know, use their Apple Watches and things like that to be able to study, hey, how does this work for an athlete? And having that residential component right there on their headquarter campus is, you know, there's a lot of value in that. So I've got to imagine for universities and for especially these Power 4 athletic.
Well, I think particularly for sports and entertainment, but also the project we referenced at University of Alabama Huntsville, we're redeveloping the golf course at University of South Florida, where they're bringing substantial program, research, academic, office, hotel, like they need that critical mass, they need that density, they need that vibrancy. And students, that's where students want to be. When you can walk outside and be near food and beverage, you can walk outside, be near your classroom, be near parks and recreation. I mean, I think that's really kind of where the market is turning to.
Well, I think that's the evolution of universities and where they were and where they are. I mean, you talk about, you know, you talked about retail and you talked about the F&B. Well, most F&B used to be done by the university, right? Yeah. And that's not what students want anymore.
Yeah.
You know, they want to be able to go to their Starbucks. They want to be able to go, actually want to go to a specialty coffee shop, honestly, right? The local coffee shop that is only in Chapel Hill or only in Tuscaloosa or wherever it may be, right? And so, I mean, I think that's why, you know, we were talking about Austin on the way here. Think about it. That school in Austin and the growth of Austin and that public-private, when I say public-private, meaning private institutions moving to Austin with the public, meaning the university colliding, and that's also what those private institutions want, is because they're recruiting those kids to come out to work for them, right? So it all comes together. I mean, look, real estate and housing has been the cornerstone for people coming together at the end of the day.
When we're talking about the Power 4, I mean, from a marketing and a branding standpoint, they've got entire departments that have been in those institutions for years. Like, they get it. You're not going to go in there and teach them anything new. They've probably taught you guys a lot of things when it comes to that. But there's a lot of other tertiary, you know, schools that are out there that are certainly in need of new facilities, both from athletic standpoint as well as residential. Just kind of curious, do you feel like you guys bring, you know, what you've learned in those bigger schools, those bigger markets, those bigger projects that will certainly benefit those?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, Wes, we've done and I don't recall the number off the top of my head, but we've done a lot of first housing. Universities are moving to more of a residential campus. And we've worked with schools as small as 1,000 plus or minus enrollment all the way to the Arizona State universities of the world. So we've really kind of worked all points in between. But I think the message, I mean, what I would say is we're about creating a story. And I think it's creating a story in collaboration with a university partner. And we not only are looking for conviction in that story with us and that university partner, but is this sellable to the market? Does the investors buy this story? Do the students buy this story? And so we've worked with a lot of smaller tertiary schools, and yes, the math equation might be different than a University of Michigan or a University of Texas, but I mean, I really, not to oversimplify, but I really see us as problem solvers. And we talk to universities across the country, some very small, some very big, but we really want to respond to what their goals and objectives are and where their challenges are. And yes, not every university can do a battery, or not every university can do what you can do at University of Texas and University of North Carolina, but I do think there's unique intersections of where I think Capstone and Lincoln can provide value, and it just may look differently for different universities. But I will say, and COVID really precipitated this, but I think we're having to do a much more in-depth underwrite of universities. As I said earlier, I think some of the rich are getting richer, and some of the smaller privates that you thought would be sustainable haven't fared as well. And so I think we're not only underwriting an opportunity, but we're underwriting the university just like they're underwriting us as partners. And I think that's just part of the due diligence that we all do as partners.
From a finance standpoint, for those schools, or just kind of give me some of the trends there.
Yeah.
You know, is it becoming harder to to do these deals with those smaller schools, or?
I would say it's getting harder to do lots of deals, no matter the size of the school, as my gray hair would indicate. I mean, we've certainly seen unique trends in the market. I mean, I think COVID, Great Recession, I mean, I think we rebounded well from each of those, but you've seen where the tax-exempt bond structure was rising, and then equity started coming to the space, and so you're seeing more equity deals. And really, I think part of the saving grace of the past few years in terms of the challenge and dislocation of the market is universities are stepping up, and I give them credit for that. I mean, we've got universities that say, hey, we got to keep up from a competitive standpoint, just from a longevity standpoint, we've got to upgrade our housing. And sometimes that upgrade means they're going to not necessarily increase their overall housing portfolio. It may be they take beds offline and they're replacement beds. So that helps, again, kind of create the story of what we're trying to do there. But I do think universities have helped provide some gap closers. I think they've been more receptive to different construction means and methodologies, to different operating platforms and structures, different financing vehicles. So I think universities have seen the need, like, hey, we know we're struggling right now, but we got to keep up, because if we can't get students here, it's going to be hard to retain them. And part of that strategy is housing, and it is other facilities. So I think it just, to Johno's point earlier, I think it really puts partnership to the test of like, hey, we're going to roll up our sleeves and figure out the best way to approach this. And I do think affordability has been a driver, and I think universities have stepped up to help that.
I've got to ask this question too. I mean, again, Capstone Development over the past decade or whatever it's been, there's been a real focus on P3. But does this new relationship mean that that's going to expand beyond just on campus?
Absolutely. And I think each of our business lines are kind of varying phases of their evolution. I mean, I do think on campus, P3 development is probably where we've got the most experience. And I do think Lincoln Stone Point helps enhance that. So I do think we've been in the upper echelon along with many other talented developers and managers in that space, but we've been in that tier. And I think the Lincoln partnership with Stone Point only enhances that. But I do think we've had limitations heretofore on other sectors. I mean, I think if you look at campus edge, off-campus development, that requires a lot of capital and it requires the expertise. And I think where Lincoln helps us tremendously is, one, their market partners are out there, boots on the ground every day, seeing those markets, understanding those markets, having those relationships. But two, with the capital resources that Lincoln Stone Point now offers, it allows us to be more prevalent in that space. I think acquisitions is the same way. I think looking at all kind of the tools we have in our toolbox now, I do think there's some growth opportunities there.
So last question for you guys. Thanks so much again for spending the time and traveling to Atlanta and letting us hear about what's happening. But from an industry perspective, is there anything that we're not talking about in this industry that we should be talking about from your standpoint?
we've talked a lot about it, but I think having the right in anything that you do in real estate, whether it's office, retail, residential, student housing, data centers, there is, how do you stay in front of the innovation, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you stay in front of the demand? How do you stay in front of what are the people that are using that real estate really want? I use this as a simple example, right? We built, I don't know how many office buildings across the country, but a lot, okay? Mm-hmm. And today, if you build an office building that doesn't have an amenity center that has a state-of-the-art fitness, and when I say amenity center, it's like walking into a really nice hotel, with conferencing, and it's I'm going to say homey feeling, right? And homey's not the right word, but you get my point. But if you don't build that, you can't lease that office building, right? Yeah. If you don't have certain things look, we put basketball courts in office buildings. We put pickleball courts here. I don't know what that next thing is that students are going to be demanding, but I just think about real estate as a whole. It is always evolving. Somebody's coming up with a new, we're talking to a hotel group and they want to put paddle in play. You know what paddle is with the glass, and it's it's basically a new, don't ask me everything, but it's basically like pickleball, but it's a new form, and they want to make sure that there's paddle. Well, you got to have a bunch of land to do it. So now you got to get creative about how that's going to be played. Yeah. So it's what is that next sort of cutting edge, and then we can start talking about technology, and I'm not the greatest at it, but like what are those things that are going to be that students demand in the student housing?
I would echo what Johno said, and really you kind of have to look at the historical perspective of like what's not going to change. Affordability is a driver. And affordability is always going to be a driver, particularly given the cost of education. Students need places to put their head at night. Like that's not going to change.
Right.
There's still value in education. So I think there's a lot of things that are fixed, but to Johno's point, there's a lot of variables too. I think part of this is continuing to understand the evolving needs of students. And we talked about mixed use, AI, technology, amenities, all these things, like we've got to be thinking like not just what students are doing today, but we got to kind of put our crystal ball in place and look at what's coming in the future, and are student needs changing, or their evolving needs. And so education, affordability, a lot of those things, they're challenged. Deals are hard to make pencil right now, but I think when you have those stalwarts and those fixed things, then you kind of work around and figure out what's still evolving, how we're adapting to that change. And I think technology is a big one, and we probably need more than one podcast to really kind of unpack all that's involved.
Well, and this was a question I was going to ask kind of off air, but just as we were talking about data centers and everything else, and we've had some conversations, about infrastructure at these universities. Are universities looking to put in their own data center to handle AI and that type of stuff, or are they kind of leaving that up to the?
I'm going to say this: I haven't seen that yet, or we haven't. It's a good question. I'm going to go ask Ryan and our data center team. But we haven't seen that yet, and I guess what I would say there is, and just a thought, I don't know if this is right or wrong, but it's expensive.
Yeah.
Right? It's expensive.
Well, there's the power component.
There's a power component. There's a real estate component. It's you got fiber, you got water. There's all the infrastructure that goes into doing one well. Mm-hmm. We do them right, and if you look across the country, I'm going to give you this, because we price somewhere in the neighborhood, I'm going to call it a $10 to $12 billion development pipeline across all of our platform, right? So we see what concrete costs, and we see what, the screw cost, and we see all that stuff. There is absolutely, unquestionably, when it comes down to MEP and it comes down to electrical, there is a prices have gone up because of data centers and because of AI.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is just the flow that the Googles, all the major groups
Yeah.
are grabbing all of that infrastructure in order to build what they need, and it's just the supply demand. So all those construction prices have gone up. So that has a direct reflecting on student housing or anything that's being developed. So I say that relative just to the cost of doing one.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, it takes time and get the power and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. On the consulting side of my business, where I do some fractional asset management, we've got one specific issue that has come up. I'm surprised it hasn't come up more recently, but there was this one unit that was getting $900 electric bill just about every month, and we're like, what is going on in this unit? And he's mining Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And we're like, something else has got to change. I mean, you could pay it, sure, but it was because of student property. It was all inclusive, and we're like, this is the reason we have a cap. So you've either got to move this somewhere else, or you're gonna have to start paying this bill. So,
but I think you'll that what you just said doesn't surprise me a bit.
Yeah,
a bit.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be very interesting to see, what certainly the next decade brings when it comes to student housing, what's happening on these campuses. And this relationship is obviously going to be at the forefront of a lot of what is going to happen, and excited to see the Capstone fingerprint continuing to be out there on these campuses, and excited about what Lincoln's bringing to it. So thanks again so much.
Thank you.
And we'll see you. This will come out probably right before Interface in Austin. So are you speaking on any panels, or are you going to be there?
I am not, but I will be there. We've got a team attending and really looking forward to it.
Great. Well, if we'll make sure got all your contact information and everything in the show notes. So
great.
If folks want to reach out and have other questions or send you an RFP, we'll make sure they're able to do that.
Well, no, we really appreciate it, and appreciate you help telling the Capstone Lincoln story.
Well, great. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, a big thanks to William and Johno for meeting me in Atlanta and diving into what this partnership between them means for the P3 and the student housing industry. Really appreciate that, Tom. As I mentioned at the end there, this episode should come out right before the Interface Student Housing Conference in Austin. So, if you're excited about what you learned here about Capstone Development Partners and what they're doing, make sure that you take a moment just to reach out to William and say hello, and that you're excited about it. Also attending the conference will be our sponsor for this episode, which is Teal Systems. If you're developing or renovating student housing, mechanical systems are one place that you just cannot afford surprises. Teal Systems delivers centralized hot water, heating, cooling infrastructure designed specifically for student housing, monitored 24/7 through their beacon technology to prevent outages before residents ever notice. It's reliable infrastructure without the operational headache, and you can learn more at tealsystems.com. Teal is also offering a tour of one of their systems at a student property in Austin during the conference. So if you're interested in that, check out their contact information. We'll have it in the show notes. Well, guys, that does it for this episode. If you've received any value at all, and I hope that you have, please share the podcast with your colleagues and tell them to subscribe. And if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, make sure that you also click the notification bell so you'll be alerted when we post more of these valuable conversations. Guys, thanks so much and have a great day. And if you're in Austin for the conference, make sure you say hello. Take care, everyone.